Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Jones here on Saturday, the 14th day of November 2015. Unfortunately, events are unfolding in Europe exactly as we have predicted in countless videos and news reports at Infowars.com and on my syndicated radio broadcast. The criminal globalist crime syndicate worldwide believes that the public is completely geopolitically and culturally ignorant and will end up basically blaming President Assad of Syria for the tragic attacks in Paris yesterday that killed so far 129 people, with 99 fighting for their lives and many others wounded. This is one of the largest terror attacks since 9/11. The second largest was just a week and a half ago when the Russian airliner was blown out of the air after leaving the Egyptian airport in southern Egypt. Within an hour, ISIS took responsibility and released a video of it exploding in the air. Our media still is spinning it, saying they don't know who did it. Within 2 minutes of the theater information being in the news, ISIS had claimed responsibility for it yet again. The mainstream media is still acting like they're not sure who did it. You know why they're doing that? Because, ladies and gentlemen, they overthrew Gaddafi more than 4 years ago using Al-Qaeda, which is the new name of ISIS. Same group, same flags, Saudi Arabian funded. We've gone over this hundreds of times. Then they said, the jihadis, we're next going to Syria, Western funded. That's what Benghazi was about, getting rid of Stevens so they could transfer the high-tech weapons, the Stinger missiles, to the Al-Qaeda forces, the Al-Nusra forces, which means Al-Qaeda in Syria. The military said we're not going to be part of this anymore 2 years ago, so they flipped the name to ISIS to confuse the public. Now, France is saying they've got to take out Assad with their aircraft carrier, take out the government, take out the infrastructure, take out the railways, the roads, the power plants, because Assad is the reason they can't get rid of ISIS. But it does appear that France was actually striking some ISIS targets. So it looks like they may be double-crossing the jihadi forces they brought in to destabilize things. So this is very confusing at this point. But we know the Russians have been decimating ISIS that had taken the middle of the country, out of Iraq up to Turkey. We know Turkey is actually also funding ISIS as well. This is all on record. We've had the former head of Defense Intelligence, who just quit 3 months ago, go public on national television. Just look it up. Head of DIA says they were ordered to support Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And the reporter goes, you mean by mistake? They go, no, this was a direct order going back years ago. So the military has gone public. Congress has talked about it. We know the 28 pages on 9/11, how Saudi Arabia was deeply involved. Our government covered that up. It's the same story. Saudi Arabia, bare minimum, attacks us on 9/11. We blame Iraq, had nothing to do with it. Now, the same type group attacks Paris, attacks the Russians, and our government and NATO's answer is take out Assad. That's how politically ignorant they think you are. Saudi Arabia attacks, you take out Saddam. Al-Qaeda attacks, Saudi Arabian funded, called ISIS, you take out Assad. I mean, it's ridiculous. Taking out Saddam got rid of the enemy of the Islamicist, radical Wahhabist regime in Saudi Arabia. Same thing now here. Saudi Arabia, just 50-something years ago, controlled Syria. They've invaded it before. Go back to Lawrence of Arabia. So I'm giving you some background knowledge here. Here's the bottom line. People are flooding Infowars.com saying, why aren't you saying it's a staged event? Why aren't you saying it's an inside job? Why aren't you saying it was the Israelis or the British or the French? Because, ladies and gentlemen, it's bigger than that. Global government is corporate run by 5 big banks and a handful of other pharmaceutical companies and military industrial complex companies. That's admitted at CFR.org. I mean, the elite don't deny this. They're having a conference next month in Paris to finish the plans for world government, in their own words. The Pope's calling for, quote, planetary government as well, carbon taxes. Big stuff's happening. TPP's been ratified in secret. It's all happening. Critical juncture. The head of the CIA's meeting on Friday the 13th, yesterday, in Paris with the head of French intelligence right when this happens. So who knows what's going on? But what I know I can prove is it's not a pure false flag, where really French intelligence did this, in my view, because they weren't really ready for it when it happened. They knew it was coming, but they weren't ready with their talking points and their agenda yet. When you see them ready within minutes with talking points, with OKC or the Kennedy assassination or 9/11, you know there's major staging. You see the scripting of a rollout. With this, though, if drills come out or other things, then we know they were at least protecting the terrorists who might have not even known they were being protected. See, this is compartmentalized. They don't really run the radical jihadists. They just protect them and open the door. Again, we don't know that happened. But it's too soon to say it's a pure false flag. But I can say that the Paris theater attack overall is a staged event, because who opened the borders? The head of the UN Council on Migration, who was the former head of the EU, Peter Sutherland, lowers Europe's borders, advertises Muslims can come in free and everything paid for. Then the West destabilizes things using Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra and ISIS forces, opens up the Turkish border to flood out of the east from as far away as Pakistan and Afghanistan into Iraq, up through that corridor into Turkey and into Syria, to then go into Europe. And then they lower the borders, advertise everything's free. Turkey lets them in, floods them through. They order Poland, Hungary, and everybody else to let them through. And then bring them in and then cover up all the weapons caches being found. Cover up the fact that 80%, and this is in the news, of the young jihadis are military-age men. These are not real refugees. That they've got fake passports, almost all of them, 70-something%. Of course we could predict they were going to attack theaters and shopping malls and train stations. Watch, it's all going to get hit. I've said this hundreds of times, neurotically, because it's a shake and bake program. They're going to start shooting down jet airliners with missiles. It's all going to happen. And most of the time, they're going to cover it up and just say, we don't know what did it. And then they're going to say, the EU has to have more power and more money to fund the refugees, and we've got to have more rights to spy on you. And Germany and France just banned any public assemblies who are protesting the illegals, the invaders. So the New World Order globalists that sit above the nation states want to balkanize them and break them down, and they make money and get power out of crisis. They are funding a radical Muslim invasion. And when Le Pen, major government minister in their parliament, the daughter of one of the most famous guys in France, she goes public and says, we're being invaded, just like we were invaded by the Nazis in 1940. They have arrested her, indicted her, and she's facing years in prison. This is a major, like one of the top presidential frontrunners, probably the top presidential frontrunner getting ready to run for president in the polls. They arrested her for her free speech. I mean, you think about how far this has gone, folks. This is a fact. And now Obama's announced massive refugees coming here. So lower the borders, advertise everything's free, then destabilize the countries, flood in the groups, ban demonstrating. Rob Lowe, who I just met one time, he's like a really nice guy when I was out in Hollywood, came out and just said, oh, now the French president closes the borders after they're attacked, pointing out Europe's being flooded. And there's all this faux outrage. How dare you? You're in big trouble. We're coming after you, racist. This is the insane political correctness.